Hey guys, Cam here from today's iPhone.com with another episode of News Bites where I round up some of the most interesting stories from the last few days. So without further ado, let's just get straight into them. Now, I did a whole load of leaks last week in my News Bite and I didn't want to go through all of them again this week, so I'm just going to focus on a couple of them. Now, the first one, as my iPhone tells me, is a fingerprint scanner, or rather it's not an actual fingerprint scanner. What it is another image of the home button from the iPhone 5S. Now, because the components on the flex connector and all that sort of stuff, it all looks a little bit different to what the iPhone 5 looks, and what's of particular interest is that instead of just being a home button with a connector or a flex, it's actually got the flex and the connector, but it's also got a chip on there, and no one seems to know exactly what this chip is for. So obviously the most obvious conclusion that anyone can come up with is that it's for the fingerprint scanner that's going to be embedded into the home button. When you add that chip, the suspicious chip, that kind of sounds like a Dorito that doesn't really trust any of the other Doritos in the Dorito bag. The suspicious chip. Anyway, this suspicious chip, when you couple it alongside some of the code that was found in iOS 7, basically the code said that there's a home button with a fingerprint sensor underneath it, and there was a user interface specifically designed that would show up when you press and hold your thumb down on the button. I wouldn't be surprised either way. It'd be nice for the iPhone 5S to have a unique feature, and apart from a fingerprint scanner, I can't really think of anything else that it could have over the iPhone 5 to set it apart. The second bunch of leaks rather came from one YouTube channel. I'll leave a link in the description box to that YouTube channel, but I think it was from Unboxed Therapy, and basically showed the iPad Mini 2 and the iPad 5 alongside the current generation models, and it showed that the iPad 5 is going to be just as thin as the iPad Mini, which is rather remarkable. Ming-Chi Kuo from KGI Securities has been at it again with his analysis, and most of it sounds fairly reasonable. What he's saying this week is that the iPad 5 and the iPad Mini 2 will be released in the final quarter of this year, pretty much the same as what they did last year, which can make complete sense considering that during the last quarter of last year they had an absolute stormer of a quarter, especially with iPad sales. Now, one thing he also said was that they might release a low-cost version of the iPad Mini next year. And I don't know what that means, whether it's going to be like the iPhone 5C is supposed to be, whether there's going to be an iPad Mini without a Retina display and with a colourful plastic back. I don't know. It might not be anything at all. It is just a rumour, but it's something worth thinking about. If $329 is too expensive for an iPad Mini, then should they release a cheaper one with a plastic back perhaps to compete with the price of the Nexus 7 or the Kindle Fire? It's worth considering. Now, onto a couple of new apps. There's been two new games released this week. One of them is Star Wars Force Collection, which to any geek sounds completely awesome. It's a Star Wars game, so let's hope it lives up to old titles that you found on consoles. But it's freemium, which is a good and a bad thing. It means you can download it for free to play it, but normally it means if you want the full experience, you have to pay with real money for fake money. It might not be like that. Give it a play and let us know what you think. The second game is one that I am really excited about. When it comes to playing games on mobile devices or consoles, the one kind of game I always play and I'm kind of addicted to is car racing games, and one of them that's come out recently is called 2K Drive. Now, it's available, it's not freemium, it's $6.99 or £4.99. It's not freemium, but that doesn't mean you can't have in-app purchases, because you can. So they'll charge you for the initial download, and then you can, basically your in-app purchase options are just to have more money, which you don't need. You can just work your way up, race through the games and use the money that you earn from that to buy cars. But if you're impatient, you can buy in-app purchases if you want to. But the graphics look great, and what I particularly like about it is that there's a whole range of types of cars, from the stupid Nissan Cube, Fiat 500 to loads of other Ford GT, Ford Focus, Formula Ford cars, and even up to like rally cars, and you can do all sorts of different kinds of races. And there's really silly games in there where you're trying to kick a giant soccer ball, football in the UK, into a massive hole in a wall, which is cool, I think. Couple of really cool accessories next. So one of them is really cool. It's the world's thinnest iPad keyboard, and essentially it's about as thick as a few pieces of paper. It's 0.49 millimeters thick, and it uses Bluetooth to connect to your iPad, and you can use it as like a cover, and it kind of flops over your iPad screen. It's even thinner than the Surface's keyboard, so essentially when you're typing on it, it doesn't look any different to typing on paper, except it's got sensors underneath it and you can just type away. Not seeing any pricing information. It looks like at the moment it's not a released product, but check it out, and I just thought it was really awesome. One product that is almost released and is available to pre-order now is the new set of Sony lenses. They're called lens style cameras, because essentially what they are is digital cameras, but they look just like a DSLR lens. They're not just lenses, it's a whole camera inside this little thing that looks like a lens. Now why it's really cool is because it can connect to your iPhone or Android device using Wi-Fi, and it's got its own app that you use to control it, so you can have your camera, what your camera is seeing on the screen while you're playing around with the lens and holding it away. So you can get all sorts of shots that you wouldn't normally be able to get with a camera in your hand. Or you can strap it to the back of your iPhone and use it like a traditional camera. And anything that you're doing shows up on your phone screen. If you don't want to use your phone at the same time, you don't have to. You can just use the lens and then connect it afterwards with the app. It's really awesome. Now there's the QX100 and the QX10. Two different models. One of them's premium, one of them isn't. One of them costs $250, the other one costs $500. So last but not least, Nestle. In an Apple News video. I don't know how it got in there. And Nestle has created a new advert that kind of mocks Johnny Ive and the way he promotes Apple products as the most revolutionary and magical things that's ever happened since, I don't know, since pixies turned into frogs or something. You know the way Johnny Ive likes to promote Apple products in the, you know, the white background and sitting calmly with his really lovely British accent and talking about how great and magical iPhone is. Well, it's kind of like that, but they're talking about the Kit Kat chocolate bar. And it's in cooperation with Android. Obviously, they've announced that Android 4.4 is going to be Kit Kat. It's not going to be key lime pie like everybody thought it was going to be. They've partnered up with Kit Kat and it's going to be called Kit Kat. Now, you may complain that Apple releases really dull names for iOS. There's been iPhone OS 1, iPhone OS 2, iPhone OS 3, and then they changed it to iOS 4, iOS 5, iOS 6, iOS 7. But at least Apple isn't going to get into trouble with the courts for encouraging people to eat loads of really unhealthy confectionery, because you know that's what's going to happen. Somebody's going to eat too many Kit Kats, and they're going to complain, and they're going to sue Android for $1 bazillion because they called Android Kit Kat. That's the world we live in. Mark my words, Android 4.5 will be a health food name. Like granola. Anyway, that's been it from me. I'm at TIP_Cam on Twitter. If you want to ask me any questions or anything, you can use the comments below. Follow me on Twitter, ask me anything on there, do what you want. I will see you again soon.